Something is going on with the sinkhole rooms, aka garden rooms in Roblox doors, and I intend to figure it out. Alright, so in case you weren't aware, with the release of Floor 2, around the game you can encounter various overgrown rooms, which usually contain some valuable items. Notable for their unique, brown-colored stone architecture and nature theming, these overgrown rooms are everywhere. It is like vegetation is infesting the hotel and the mines. Not only is the courtyard and the entire greenhouse section of the hotel overgrown, but the nest, Jeff's shop, and floor 2, as well as a bunch of individual rooms also seem to be too. There's definitely something deeper going on here, and it all connects back to one entity in particular, one who at face value seems very unintriguing. Today, in this video, I'll be revealing the lore of these overgrown garden rooms, also known as sinkholes, seen throughout the game. So with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so in order to understand the sinkholes, we must first understand who is responsible for them, and that is the Big Vine. For those who don't know, in Jeff's shop and floor 2, as well as in the courtyard, both areas being overgrown with vegetation, players can find a large vine covered in spikes. This vine is extremely important when it comes to theorizing, as not only does El Goblino point it out, but the developers themselves also told us to keep an eye out for it, proving that it does in fact have some lore significance. Additionally, given how this is the only lore important plant in the game and it is exclusively found in the sinkholes, I think it is pretty safe to say that it must be directly related to them. But wait just a minute, this isn't the only lore important plant in the game, as there's one other plant which seems to be significant as well, and that is Snare. Snare is a stationary entity which stuns the player who steps on it with large spikes, and much like the vine, it is exclusively found in overgrown areas, more specifically the courtyard and the greenhouse. Now, at face value, the vine and snare don't seem to be connected at all, other than both of them being plants. But if you dig a little deeper, you can find that these two are in fact very closely related. So related that it is theorized that they are the same being. Essentially, based on a message from the developers, we know that the snare traps seen throughout the game aren't individual entities, but rather they are all part of one being, and the traps are connected through a series of vines. It is theorized that the big vine seen in Jeff's shop, as well as the courtyard, is a part of that interconnected vine series that connects all of the individual snare traps. And this is further backed up by how both the vine and the snare traps have spikes with a similar color on them. Just a little side note, but the spikes on the snare render used in this video were recolored to be black so the lighting would better cooperate with it. But in-game they are a yellow-white color, which does match up to how the spikes look on the big vine. Alright, so now that we have gone over the big vine as well as its theorized connection to snare, what does this all have to do with the sinkholes? Well, I believe that this vine may be directly responsible for the overwhelming spread of vegetation seen in the mines. Essentially, we know that plants are living beings, meaning that this big vine is as well. And given how it is directly seen holding a lamppost in Jeff's shop, I think it is pretty safe to say that it is capable of moving various building components around and spreading its influence. Now, something which is important to note is the visual appearance of the overgrown rooms. They all have access to sunlight and rainwater, which makes sense as those are vital to a plant's survival. But they also have unique architecture, such as lampposts and these brown-colored brick archways and walls. Now, we know that the courtyard and greenhouse seem to intentionally be overgrown by whoever built the hotel, given how these areas were specifically created to support plant growth. However, the sinkholes in the mines seem to unintentionally be overgrown, and this is further backed up by how players can sometimes encounter rooms identical to Jeff's shop without having all the vegetation, implying that these rooms weren't built for the purpose of growing plants. So, here's my theory. Given how the courtyard and greenhouse were intentionally made to house and grow vegetation, as well as how the big vine is also seen in the courtyard, I believe that the big vine, as well as the snares by extension, started in this area of the hotel. However, over time its influence began seeping into the mines, and anywhere which could support plant life would be infested with vegetation. Given how the vine has the capability to pick up and place down various building components, such as how it can be seen holding a lamppost in Jeff's shop, I think it is possible it took various pieces of architecture from the courtyard and the greenhouse and manually placed them in the sinkholes in the mines, as that way the vegetation could grow near things it was familiar with. This would also explain why the present-day architecture of the mines in the courtyard seemed to be in disrepair, as that would make sense if the vine was taking apart various structures and placing them in other areas. Now, as to why the vine is doing this, it could just be a matter of biology. Plants like to grow, and this one in particular seems to have the ability to grow so big that it can take over entire rooms. After all, the big vine isn't inherently evil. At the end of the day, it's just a plant, but that still doesn't mean it can't be menacing. Now, I would like to mention that in another video about this same topic, I stated that given how snare traps are hostile to the player, and by extension so is the big vine, it could be that this giant snare vine web could become a boss we might fight in the future, and these sinkholes are only a sneak peek of the entity's true power. I still think this may be the case, and if you haven't already, make sure you check out that video for an even deeper understanding of the lore of this creature. Anyways, that was the entire video. To summarize, I think that the big vine is creating the sinkholes seen in the mines to further spread its influence. Let me know in the comments what you think of this theory, and with all of that being said, thank you all for watching and I hope you enjoyed.